Dorothy Jane Scott was a bright-eyed and caring soul. She was born and raised in Stanton, California, in a close-knit family consisting of her parents, Vera and Jacob, and her younger brother, David. From a young age, Dorothy showed a natural aptitude for organization and attention to detail, traits that would later serve her well in her work as a secretary. As Dorothy grew older, she developed a deep sense of responsibility and duty towards her family. She was particularly close to her son, Danny, whom she doted on and devoted herself to as a single mother. Despite the challenges of being a single parent, Dorothy worked tirelessly to provide for Danny and create a loving and stable home for him. Dorothy's dedication extended beyond her family. She had a warm and caring nature that endeared her to those around her, and she was known for her generosity and willingness to help others. She had a close-knit group of friends, including her co-workers at Swinger's Psych Shop and Custom John's Head Shop in Anaheim, where she worked as a secretary for her father and his business partner, John Kosala. Dorothy was known for her impeccable work ethic and her unwavering commitment to her job. She took pride in her role as a secretary, and her organizational skills and attention to detail made her an invaluable asset to the business. She was well-liked and respected by her colleagues, who often turned to her for advice and support. Outside of work, Dorothy enjoyed spending time with her son, Danny, whom she cherished above all else. She loved taking him to the park, reading him bedtime stories, and watching him grow and thrive. Despite the challenges of being a single parent, Dorothy was determined to provide Danny with the best possible life and future. However, Dorothy's life took a dark turn when she became the target of a stalker. It started with anonymous phone calls at work, with the unknown man calling himself the Caller, knowing intimate details of her life. He alternated between professing his love for her and being angry and vengeful. Dorothy was unnerved but tried to brush it off initially, thinking it was a prank. But the calls grew increasingly sinister, with the stalker making threats and showing knowledge of her daily routine. Dorothy confided in her mother, Vera, and her friends, but they were unable to identify the voice or determine the stalker's identity. Dorothy's fear escalated when the stalker threatened to cut her up into bits, and she began taking self-defense classes to protect herself. Despite the fear and anxiety caused by the stalker, Dorothy tried to maintain her normal routine and remain strong for Danny. She continued to go to work and take care of her responsibilities, but the constant harassment took a toll on her mental and emotional well-being. Little did Dorothy know that her life was about to take a tragic turn. On May 27, 1980, Dorothy dropped off Danny at her parents' home and went to a work meeting. She offered to take her co-worker, Conrad Bostron, to the hospital when he fell ill, along with Pam Head, another co-worker. She informed her parents before leaving, not knowing that it would be the last time they would see her. At the hospital, Conrad was treated for a spider bite, and Pam and Dorothy waited for him. But when Conrad was released, Dorothy went to the parking lot to retrieve her car and never returned. Pam and Conrad searched for her, but Dorothy had vanished without a trace. The news of Dorothy's disappearance spread quickly, and her family, friends, and co-workers were frantic with worry. The police were called in, and an extensive search effort was launched to find her. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, but Dorothy remained missing, and the mystery of her disappearance only deepened. As the investigation into Dorothy's case unfolded, a series of chilling events came to light. It was discovered that the stalker who had been harassing Dorothy for months was the same person responsible for her disappearance. The police determined that Dorothy had been abducted on the night of May 27, 1980, from the parking lot of the hospital where she had taken her co-worker, Conrad, for treatment. Further investigations revealed that Dorothy's car had been found abandoned and set on fire, with no traces of her inside. The police also received taunting phone calls from the same anonymous stalker, who continued to torment them with cryptic messages and clues about Dorothy's whereabouts. Despite their best efforts, the police were unable to trace the calls or identify the perpetrator. Dorothy's family and friends were devastated, grappling with grief, anger, and confusion. Her son Danny, who was only 4 years old at the time of her disappearance, was left without answers, wondering why his beloved mother was suddenly taken from him. The media coverage of Dorothy's case intensified, and it captured the attention of the public. Tips and leads poured in from all over the country, but none of them led to any significant breakthroughs in the case. The once vibrant and loving woman had seemingly vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and heartbreak. Months turned into years, and Dorothy's case remained unsolved, leaving her family and friends in a state of perpetual agony. Despite the passage of time, they refused to give up hope and tirelessly advocated for justice for Dorothy. Her mother, Vera, became a vocal advocate for victims of crime and worked tirelessly to keep Dorothy's case in the public eye, determined to find answers for her daughter. As the years went by, the case grew colder, but Dorothy's family and friends remained resolute in their pursuit of justice. They held vigils, fundraisers, and awareness campaigns, hoping to keep Dorothy's memory alive and generate new leads in the case. They refused to let Dorothy's story fade into obscurity, determined to find the truth and hold the perpetrator accountable. Decades passed, and Dorothy's case remained a mystery. Her son, Danny, grew up without a mother, but he carried her memory with him every day, vowing to never forget her and to continue seeking answers. Dorothy's family and friends continued their unwavering pursuit of justice, holding on to the hope that one day, the truth would finally come to light. Then, after over 3 decades since Dorothy's disappearance, a stunning revelation came to light. The police received a tip from a woman who claimed to have information about Dorothy's case. The tip led the police to a property in Santa Ana, California, where human remains were discovered. Through DNA testing, it was confirmed that the remains belonged to Dorothy Jane Scott. The discovery brought a mix of emotions for Dorothy's family and friends. While they were devastated by the confirmation of her death, they were also relieved that her remains were finally found. The discovery also reignited the investigation into Dorothy's murder, with renewed efforts to find the person responsible for the heinous crime. The death of the potential suspect left Dorothy's family and friends with a bittersweet feeling. While they were devastated that they would never get the answers they were desperately seeking from the suspect, they were determined to continue their pursuit of justice for Dorothy. The police intensified their investigation, following new leads and clues that emerged from the evidence gathered at the Santa Ana property where Dorothy's remains were found. They meticulously combed through the evidence, re-interviewed witnesses, and reviewed old case files in their relentless pursuit of the truth. Months went by, and the investigation slowly pieced together a timeline of events that led to Dorothy's murder. It was revealed that the same stalker who had been harassing Dorothy for months was the one who abducted her from the hospital parking lot on that fateful night in 1980. The stalker had been infatuated with Dorothy and became increasingly obsessed with her, which ultimately led to a violent and tragic end. Through painstaking efforts, the police were able to gather enough evidence to establish a solid case against the perpetrator, even though he had passed away. The evidence included witness testimonies, phone records, and DNA analysis that conclusively linked the perpetrator to Dorothy's murder. In a surprising turn of events, the police also uncovered a long history of stalking and harassment by the perpetrator towards other women. It was discovered that Dorothy was not his only victim, and there were other cases of women who had been terrorized by him in the past. The evidence against the perpetrator was overwhelming, and the police were able to close the case, officially identifying him as Dorothy's killer. The closure brought a mix of emotions for Dorothy's family and friends. While they were relieved that justice was finally served, they were also filled with grief for the loss of their beloved Dorothy. The long-awaited resolution brought a sense of closure for them, as they were able to finally put Dorothy to rest and begin the process of healing. Dorothy's memory lived on in the hearts and minds of her loved ones, and her story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of stalking and harassment. Her mother, Vera, continued her advocacy work for victims of crime, tirelessly raising awareness about the issue and fighting for stricter laws to protect victims.